All right. Wonderful. Well, it's great to see we're starting to get some fanfare for our council meetings. This is fantastic. I'll call order to the meeting here at 9:31. And note that for attendance, we're all here attending in person this morning. I'd ask council to make a motion for adoption of the agenda as presented today.
But I'm beating administration. Sorry, Grace. That December 2nd, 2025 agenda be adopted as presented.
Perfect. We can go to vote. Thank you. Wonderful. That motion passed unanimously. So we will start our morning with a presentation from Ms. Ladouceur. Welcome you up to the podium. Just want to start by reminding if it's just yourself presenting or our presenters at all that there is a 5-minute time limit at 30 seconds. At 30 seconds, there will be a bell. Don't let it throw you off, but we'll give you a 30-second warning, and then at 5 minutes, we'll ask you to wrap it up, and then we will follow up with any questions or conversation after that. When you
my associate included in my 5 minutes.
He is.
Ooh.
Mr. Mayor, if he's separate, he can have his own 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. If there is a separate presentation, I don't have that on the list
It's
as a
not on your
separate.
agenda.
Yeah.
No, I'm not on the agenda.
But it could be.
Yeah, if they're signed in at the front, the team can record the name as a separate presentation because the agenda item hasn't started yet. So it's your discretion, Mayor, but we could have an extra speaker.
Sure. We can make amendment to that. That's fine. If you'd like to have a separate presentation for that for another 5 minutes.
Thanks for the flexibility. Okay, good. Hey, good morning, everyone. Congratulations on your new appointments. Welcome, Mayor Scott. So my name is Joanne Ladouceur, and my family has resided in the St. Albert community for over 200 years. One of my ancestral grandmothers, Angèle, was born in St. Albert in 1805. Another grandmother was admitted to the Youville Residential School in 1882. We have other historic families here today. I thank them for coming to provide support. The Perot family is sitting up there. They too have been in the St. Albert community for hundreds of years. I want to acknowledge members of the Wechitowin Youville Residential School Truthing Initiative who are here, the Métis community members, and a representative from the Otipemisiwak Métis government. Thank you for coming. It's nice to have the RCMP here. I'm honored. Welcome. My mother, who's 89 years old and grew up in St. Albert, was unable to attend. Interestingly, both of my parents worked for the institutions that we are calling on today. My mother was the secretary for the superintendent of the Catholic School Board for over 20 years, and my father worked for the city of St. Albert for over 25 years. My mom lived her early years in a house located directly behind the present-day school board office, and their property was expropriated by the city in 1957. In exchange, the city offered them a small house on Mill Drive. To the south of that hill property, there was a pond, and at that time, a drain pipe emptied into it. The pond never froze over at the base where the pipe entered. My grandmother, my cookum, would keep extra clothes available for unaware skaters who often fell there and needed dry clothing. The site of the Father John School itself was the property of the DeRocher family, another historic family from the area. The house on the hill prior to my mom's family living there was the home of Joseph Benoit, who later became the first Métis NHL player and won a Stanley Cup with the Canadiens in 1942. He grew up in that house on that hill and skated on that pond. As a lifetime Métis resident of St. Albert and project lead for our local residential school truthing initiative, I urgently request that the school, the City of St. Albert and the Greater St. Albert Catholic Regional School District withhold from proceeding with or supporting the sale of the Father John site and the adjacent city-owned land 13 and 15 Mission Avenue respectively, until meaningful consultation has taken place with Indigenous community members, elders, and knowledge keepers. Looking at the land acknowledgements of the city and the school board, you both have it so right when you speak to the traditional lands of the First Nations and Métis peoples. The city's acknowledgement also speaks to quote unquote, sharing the stewardship of the beautiful land, and the school board, quote unquote, honoring the spirit of the land. And so it challenges my thinking. Where do we actually stand when it comes down to honoring the words that you describe? As you are all aware, the turnaround time on this matter was a period of 6 weeks from the time the motion was passed to the closing date of submissions to purchase. I ask why this happened the way it did. If the city claims to have Indigenous engagement on the agenda, such as contained within the Pehonan report and the board in their board policy handbook, which states it is important for our educational communities to pay full respect to the historical circumstances, traditional and existing lands, and cultural values of our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, then why wouldn't there be an attempt at reaching out? Here we are again, facing a matter with profound significance without ever being invited to the table, this time over our very own historic traditional homeland area. We are all familiar with the calls to action. I have referenced them in my 2 former letters to City and Council and the Superintendent, to which I have yet to receive a reply in writing. Our Otipemisiwak government has now also submitted a letter. These 2 sites, both being considered for sale, fall within an area with exceptional cultural and historical value. Decisions regarding these lands must be measured against the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action, which are not only recommendations, but moral and civic obligations. We have also engaged Media Relations Pipiguan Pitiguan in this matter. The City of St. Albert's own Heritage Management Plan states, rich in its diversity and history, the City of St. Albert is rooted in its missionary and Métis beginnings. Oh, this is unfortunate. Such an important thing. So when we consider the history of the Mission Hill area, we would be remiss if we did not consider, and I have a handout here, which I hope you will look at, the province's designation of the area in question. And so I'm going to end with a little bit about the residential school. Let's honor the children of the Youville Residential School on this traditional Métis homeland. The over 2,300 children who attended there, and not just First Nation and Métis children, there were numerous non-Indigenous children, many of French backgrounds, along with smaller numbers of children from other cultural groups. Let's honor the over 140 children who died there. Let's use this prominent cultural, spiritual, and historic site.
Mrs. Lasser, thank you.
This is really frustrating. You can share that. It's
Marta, is he
Good morning.
signed in? Okay, perfect. Just making sure, all good? Okay. Ms. Lattiser, there is an opportunity for us to now ask you questions or continue the conversation. Would you like to do that after the second presentation? Concurrently? Okay, thank you very much. Sir, whenever you're ready, you have 5 minutes as well.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us this morning. I think the more we can build relationships, the better off we are, at least us, the Métis. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time about the Métis in St. Albert. St. Albert Métis and Lac Saint Anne, which we basically were one, same families back and forth. In fact, the seed settlers a lot came from Lac Saint Anne. St. Albert Métis actually went to sleep for years. When I first moved here in 1987, there was no Métis organization. And at one time, like I said, this Métis community was the biggest in Alberta. So it went to sleep. We had 3 attempts at getting it organized, and finally, the last time we said, we need to revive Métis in St. Albert. They're the part of founders of this community. We were the first workers. We did the farming. We established our dwellings here through the river lots. And finally, eventually, we did get organized, and we have kept going with the support of various communities, individual in St. Albert. We're here to stay. We're here to redevelop, refine our culture, and celebrate it. And thus far, we've had good support from the city of St. Albert, especially for celebration of Métis Week, Louis Riel Week, and basically Indigenous days in June. Joanne presented the information about Youville School. We've had children there from 36 nations across Alberta and Western Canada who came here. We want to contact, we're working with the First Nations now because the bulk of many of the children that attended there were from First Nations around here. We've done research, as Joanne referred to. We've found over 2,000 children. We were fortunate to find one of the best researchers that we know of. In fact, he worked for National Geographic for 20 years. So we're very lucky, very fortunate. We think the Creator was with us in having that individual come with us. He found, like she mentioned, well over 2,000 children, 140 some passed away in this institution. We have a next step, and that's to work with the First Nations and see what we're going to do with all the information we have. We want to acknowledge those children, and we also want that they never be forgotten again. So we intend to have some kind of monument, which we will be deciding with the First Nations, what is the type of commemoration we will have in St. Albert, and maybe have it on an annual basis. So just give you a little bit of, this is just a little bit of history of the Métis in St. Albert. And again, thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you very much. I would invite, would you like to continue, or you still have some time, or is that?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, thank you very much. I would invite council now, Ms. Ladisor, if you'd like to come to the podium, if there are questions on behalf of council or comments.
Yeah. The lady came up.
Okay. Thank you for
Yeah,
this.
thank you. So we'll start with questions and comments from council. It's not a continuation of the presentation, but it's just an opportunity for further dialogue. I will start with Councillor Clortash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Archie, right?
Yes.
Arcan, I think, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, to Mr. Arcan. Just first question, could you clarify for me? So you mentioned in your presentation 2,000 children that have been, was that 2,000 children that attended the Youville Residential School? Is that what that was? And 147 that passed away there? Was that correct? Okay, I wasn't sure.
Exactly over 2,300.
2,300 children that attended the Youville Residential School. Okay, thank you for that. And then Mrs. Ladisor, I had a couple of questions for you, and I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can answer this now. If this is probably a longer question, but I'm wondering if you could maybe explain or help me to understand the link between the Youville Residential School and the actual site in question that we're talking about now. Just what's the relationship between those two? I think I know a little bit about the history, but lots to learn about the history of the Youville Residential School.
You think Mission Hill, that we're talking about?
Right.
The residential school, the connection between the two?
Yeah, so I think the school was where the Youville home is now, if I'm not mistaken. And so the site in question that is for sale, just the connection between those two, what it means to you, what it means to Métis, like what's the connection between those two? Yeah, if you could help me with that.
Well, first
I'll defer to Joanne.
First of all, we know that the children were made to clear the trees off that hill as manual labor instead of being in the schoolroom. We know that there was a lot of manual labor that went on using the children who attended the school. The connection, when you think about it, is that, well, we also, through our research, we have come to realize that there could be the possibility of a grave at the top of the hill. We know that families who lived on that hill, including my mom's family, her brothers attended the Youville Residential School. And there were many St. Albert families who did go to the Youville. So the connection there in terms of Métis history, being the river lot system and being on that land, traditional land, and obviously going to school at the Uville at the time of Father Lacombe arriving in 1861 go hand in hand.
The location of the school, the actual location.
The actual location of the school is very close to where it is. We currently have a video that shows overlays of mapping to really describe the church area. So one day it'd be great to share that with you so you can clearly see. We also know that there's a concern over unmarked graves and graves that no longer appear on original maps. They don't appear today.
The actual location of the residential school is basically across where across from the offices of the Catholic school.
Yes,
Right?
and
It's
further,
right over there.
close to where the existing Bishop Palace is, right? Right by
For
the
sure.
big
Okay, yeah.
church.
That's where I thought the school was. I don't mean
Yeah.
to, for this to be insensitive. Like, I just, you had talked about the lake. I know before Father Jan was there, there was a pond or a lake at the bottom of the hill,
That's
correct? So it's not your understanding that there would be graves or children buried in that, on that site, or?
We know that the Greater St. Albert Catholic Regional District did do GPR work on the Father Jan area back in, I believe, 2021. And there was nothing found there.
Okay, thank you. And then I wanted to ask a question specifically about the letter that you submitted. So in the letter, you have 5 things that you'd like to see on that site. So you identified a children's park commemoration for the children of the Uville Residential School, green space, walking areas, picnic grounds, event-friendly spaces, adequate parking, and outdoor space for National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. So if those 5 things were made conditional of any sale or were included in whatever project comes forward, would that be enough to, I don't know, satisfy your request, or is it more than those 5?
No, we don't want the
Conditions.
sale of the land at this time. We want to meet at the table to talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cortesh. I'll move it to Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Thank you for coming today and speaking on this sensitive and complex subject with the sale of 13 Mission. I do have a question for our administration. Was there an attempt? I can ask that after. Okay, sorry. I'm still learning the process of everything. Okay. I wanted to ask if there was a way to arrange a consultation with the Indigenous communities, who would you want at that table, and what would that mean? What would that mean for you?
Absolutely. We would compile a team of Indigenous community members, elders and knowledge keepers, both from St. Albert and within the surrounding First Nation communities.
And do you think that this could be what do you think kind of timeline that, like, if we said, could we do a consultation in the new year? Like, do you think that is something that could be arranged?
Absolutely. I do know that your closing date for proposals was November 7th, and that your deadline for making a decision was December 19th. So we have to consider those dates, I guess, in this scenario.
Okay, thank you, Joanne.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Joanne. I just have I guess a couple of questions. It's often referred, and I certainly appreciate the sensitivity to this matter. There has been conversation, and there will continue to be conversation after this amongst council on the next steps forward. So consultation, collaboration, engagement are terms often used when dealing with this specific matter. I struggle sometimes to understand what consultation means. Is that we'd like to have an influence over what happens there? Is it like we'd like to be the one driving the direction on what happens there? I mean, it's 2 different sites that have been combined in a sense to try to collaboratively work together to put together a project. However, they are separate entities, and I know there's conversations between the school board as well as with the city in terms of the 2 different sites. So engagement and collaboration, it's often a term used to, you know, bring people collectively together. However, the definition can be quite different depending on how you look at it. So I'm just trying to get some clarity on what ultimately, if it was up to you on how you would see that move forward. I'm looking for a definition around that, because I think maybe then that sets an expectation or helps people clarify what the expectation might look like.
Well, as Madam President Andrea Sandmeyer's letter made reference to, we would like to engage at the table. So if that's my word for consultation, let's sit down and let's put the concerns on the table and let's talk about them. What are your interests? What are our interests? What are your expectations? What are our expectations? What do you see as an outcome? What do we see as an outcome? Let's put our hearts and minds together and see if we can create something that's beautiful for the community, while honoring reconciliation that is spoken to so almost carelessly on occasion. So what does that look like? You know, let's sit down and discuss it. I can't tell you, you know, I mean, if there's a process, you have agendas, you send out a meeting notice, like, to me, that's consultation, right? And then we sit down and we go through the items. I'm not sure I totally get your question, but that's how I see it.
Okay, I apologize. I think maybe to clarify is that the challenge that we face is that there's another entity that owns a majority of the land. And if they decide to move forward with a proposal or what they would like to see there, it's often difficult to dictate what that might look like from a development perspective. So if they decide to move forward with that, to put restrictions or contingencies on that development may be a challenge. I think it's important to recognize, you know, what you would like to see there. However, I'm trying to find a way where collaboration or engagement is still achieved. However, understanding the other side of it is it may be difficult to achieve everything that everybody wants because we're not in control of that other parcel, if that makes sense. So I hope you can respect that. We can't dictate what that looks like. However, acknowledging that we have the opportunity to have a conversation at the table.
You know, there was obviously collaboration between the city and the school board, which led to the proposal. So I guess that makes me wonder, you know, why we wouldn't be able to sit down with them again. Clearly, it's indicated on the proposal that it is a joint purchase project. So I know that it was talked about as early as 2024 with the school board. So clearly, like I say, collaboration or consultation with the school board shouldn't be a problem. I mean, it's what brought us here today, right? The school board has reached out and they're willing, superintendent is willing to meet with us with one of his board of trustees as early as tomorrow.
Well, I appreciate your time. I don't have any other questions or comments. I don't believe council does as well. So I certainly appreciate both your time and coming here this morning. And like I said, we will continue the conversation after amongst council after this and what's next. So thank you very much.
Well, and I think responses to the letters is probably a good place to start.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We can open it up to questions for administration now, and I believe we do have one from Councillor Cortash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to administration. Wondering if you could maybe give council a bit of I guess just an overview of the process moving forward here. I know in an informal sense, we've had some information, but kind of no official briefing yet on mission. So we just heard some dates, November 7th, December 19th. What is the procedure moving forward here? What do we expect? What do we expect next steps are?
Yeah, thank you. I think just in terms of the timelines, Mr. Ladouceur was correct. And so the request for the submissions from interested parties has closed. You'll be briefed on that later in terms of where that sits. And in terms of the timeline, the end December date is based on a council meeting, right? Because ultimately council's told us to get on with it, but we closed the timeline based on being able to get the council to show you ultimately what those are. And so she is correct in terms of those timelines, and it would take council to alter them.
And so then what's the expectation for December 19th? Is the expectation that both the school board and the city will either approve or deny a sale by the 19th or?
Certainly from a city perspective, that's what we're aiming towards. Again, we cannot dictate what the school does. And so to the mayor's previous comments, there absolutely was discussion about jointly marketing at the same time those two plots of land. But that doesn't mean that anyone is bound to either purchase both plots of land or we cannot dictate to the Greater St. Albert Catholic School Board what they do. One way or the other, but we could certainly have discussions, I think, collaboratively together. Yeah.
But that's the intent, is to make a decision on the sale by the 19th.
That is the original intent, yes.
And so then, I don't know if you can answer this. So where I'm going with this, so what is the process? And I don't know how these things work with land sales like this, where the districting is clearly going to need to change to accommodate presumably whatever the proponents are going to purchase the land for. And so maybe this is speculation. I don't know. Do people put in offers? Would developer put an offer on the land based on, like, conditional on redistricting? And I guess is that our only opportunity? That's the next opportunity to have kind of some degree of consultation with the public in terms of what goes on the site?
Short answer is yes, but Mr. Slack can talk about the redistricting.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher, and thank you for the question, Councillor Cortash. So with respects to next steps after, I guess in theory, one of the applicants is selected to go forward from the city perspective, any applicants, any parties that were interested in the property and contacted the city were informed that the land would need to be redistricted to have a different use on the site. From a redistricting perspective, we would anticipate that a public engagement session would be held prior to any public hearing to gather concerns from the residents of the area, community, et cetera. And then there is a public hearing component as well, where people are able to, again, voice any concerns, expectations, et cetera, prior to council making a decision on a redistricting.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So selecting an applicant doesn't, of course, guarantee redistricting or anything like that. It just allows it to move forward to the next step. And the next step would be has the opportunity for broader consultation prior to it coming to a public hearing. So there's an opportunity before it comes to a public hearing to have some consultation, and then of course the public hearing, and then whatever council decides then, and either it goes ahead or it's back to the drawing board at that stage. That's correct.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. That's correct. But what I would say on that particular front, right, I think there's a couple of elements there. So that consultation for the redistricting does not talk about the proposals that have engendered it, right? And so, that is still what it is. We've got the interest from the developers we've got. And so the ultimate use of that land, yes, the redistricting could determine one way or the other, but the nature of the proposal is sort of baked in, right? Based on what we've pushed forward, if that makes sense to you currently. And I think the other piece is, perhaps certainly late to need, but we certainly are reaching out to try and start some of those conversations now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We'll move questions to Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I have a few questions. And actually one just came up from what Councillor Cortash was just saying. So if at public consultation, like we get to like the process of having the public consultation, at that time, if we had meaningful engagement with the Indigenous communities and we felt like we wanted to pause that sale or kind of postpone it, is that possible at that time?
Yeah, Mr. Slapp, please go ahead. If you don't redistrict the land for the use, then effectively it dies.
And I'll just say, so, and again, this relates back, Councillor Patrick, to Councillor Cortash's question about conditional sales. So right now, what we're talking about is sale of property, much as sales happen throughout the city. Typically, we do not do engagement on sales of property. They're publicly noticed for city property, and then whoever wants to come in and make a proposal does so. So now, like you're kind of blending two processes. You're talking about a purchase of a property, which then would theoretically under Mr. Cortash's, Councillor Cortash's scenario be conditional on the redistricting. And maybe that's something that the developer does. Maybe that's something that the developer doesn't have interest in. So it's a little bit speculative to say whether one leads to the second.
Thank you for that. So I'm just feeling a bit like a bit confused because we have something like our Pehonan report, for example. We also have a community and well-being strategy. So in what point in both of those, we reference reconciliation, we reference engagement, meaningful engagement with Indigenous communities. So at what point, if we have a piece of land like this, that's, for example, culturally sensitive, at what point do we say, hey, maybe we should stop before we go forward with this and consult Indigenous communities and have some engagement beforehand? Like, was there, and as far as I know, there was no attempt before we decided the sale of this?
So thank you for the question, Councillor Patrick. Again, typically in planning and development in the city, engagement is done when a use is proposed, not when ownership changes. So there was no engagement prior to any proposal to change the ownership of these parcels. And that was done under direction of previous council.
And maybe I could ask, I believe he's online, Mr. Dooley, the head of government relations, Indigenous relations and environment, to offer some comment, perhaps not specific to the 13 Mission site, but I think more broadly as we look at our framework and roadmap.
Oh, thank you. I would just add that this is again, I'm having some technical, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, Trevor, but maybe you turn your camera off before someone has a seizure.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Councillor Patrick. Like, I think, again, one of the corporate business plan initiatives we're undertaking right now is the development of a corporate-wide Indigenous relations framework and reconciliation action plan. So it's intended to sort of standardize some of our engagement and communication processes on a go-forward basis. So I think the challenge is that we've been trying to do engagement concurrent to not having that framework in place yet. So again, the intent is to have that framework complete and inform engagement activities on a go-forward basis in 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. Okay, I think I just have one more question. So just got to think about how I'm going to word this. So at what point, at what point would we do meaningful engagement? Like, I'm feeling like at this point, I would like to consider working with administration to bring forth a motion to pause the sale of 13 Mission Ave until meaningful and transparent consultation is done with our local Indigenous communities, including the Odaipamisiwak government, our Métis district representatives, our First Nation elders, our survivors, our descendants. So is that something that we could work with?
So, Councillor, that would take a council motion. And so I'm just going to read out the current council motion that is on the table. And so that the CAO be authorized to dispose of the lands municipally described as 13 Mission Avenue. You note it doesn't include 15 because that's the Greater St. Albert Catholic School Board, not us, for a sale price not less than market value, and to execute any associated agreements and documents on terms and conditions satisfactory to the CAO. That's some boilerplate language in there from a land sale perspective. But council has told us to sell the land. And so if you don't want the land sold, pending engagement and consultation, that will take a council motion to do so.
Okay, just one last comment. I just want to comment on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada and how it defines reconciliation. And it is an ongoing process of establishing and maintaining respectful relationships. And I think that is really important, especially in our size of a city like ours and with the history that we have here of Métis and First Nation people. And so, yeah, I definitely think I'd like to work with administration to bring forth just a motion to pause the sale just until that consultation engagement is done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. We'll move to Councillor Clark now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just trying to get a better handle on the past decisions of past councils that have brought us to this, because obviously there's been a decommission of the site. And I'm looking at past backgrounders that say that in December of 2023, the Government of Alberta Historic Resource application was approved for redevelopment as there are no Historical Resources Act obstacles. Does that kind of take us out of the consultation? Is that how you would have seen it at that point in time, or is that putting words in your mouth?
Yeah, Mr. Slack can certainly speak to it. I think those are two different distinct things to a degree, right? And so the Alberta Historical Resource component is an absolutely critical but that's as good as the records they've got. The consultation piece, I think, takes into account oral history and sort of different components, right? That could inform the history of the area and of a particular plot of land. But I'll stop there and just turn it over to Mr. Slack.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Clark. So, yeah, as you mentioned, the government of Alberta, we have consulted with their records, and it was flagged as a area of cultural sensitivity or cultural significance, but there were no archaeological finds or anything that were identified on the site. So from that perspective, it was cleared for redevelopment. Regardless, based on the location, we would require an engagement, a public engagement, because of a potential proposed use for the redevelopment of the site. So I think that it actually, I guess that engagement is open to all public, whether it's Métis local or other First Nations or just residents of Mission or people from the city that would want to weigh in. But the point of that is to kind of understand what possible concerns there could be with the redevelopment of that site, and then what mitigations may need to be taken in order to move forward with the redevelopment of the site and prior to the redistricting, so that the applicants could then understand what they're getting into from a redevelopment plan perspective.
Okay.
And on that related note, I can't state that on Friday, actually we've reached out and both Métis Nation of Alberta District 11 and Confederacy of Treaty 6 were kind enough to meet with us on Friday to begin a discussion related to 13 Mission.
Okay, and just one last question. Again, a previous backgrounder, and this looks like it's 2 councils ago, in May of 2021, actually gave direction to divest of and redistrict or redevelop 13 Mission. Is that correct? It's like almost 5 years ago?
Yes, that's correct. That was prior to the actual demolition of the NABI building site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are we allowed to? Unfortunately, we did, yeah. 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 I just in I don't believe we have any other councillor comments. So just in closing, I think it's important to note that, council has a responsibility to make the best decision possible with the information we have at the time. And I think we have to respect that past council made a decision based on what they had available. However, we have a responsibility to consider all the stakeholders and those that are impacted in the decisions that are made. But ultimately, council's decision is for what's best for the city, and consideration for the stakeholders, like Mr. Slot had said, comes not at time of ownership change, but at time of use, proposed use. I understand what Councillor Patrick is saying. I maybe, Mr. Fletcher, you can clarify that the collaboration with the school board was out of potential to move the project forward concurrently together because there were some challenges trying to sell them separately.
Well, I'm not, yeah, I think it was recognized that, you know, from a development perspective, a larger lot is preferable generally to a smaller lot. And so we agreed to market them at the same time, effectively. That's the level of collaboration, but none of that presupposes a decision on either plot of land by either party or constrains their decision making.
And regardless of the proposals that we've received, and conversations we'll have, after, the school board ultimately could do the same thing. They could come back and say, we're not interested in moving forward with this now, and it would change the progress of what we're doing.
That's correct. The school board has the authority over their piece of land. We don't, yeah.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. I thank everybody for the engagement today and, appreciate it. We'll take this into consideration and we'll have the conversations moving forward.
Mr. Mayor, I heard Councillor Patrick, did you have a motion or were you, I don't know when the right time is, but. Okay,
Not right now, but I will be working, I'll be sending out an email.
okay, thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll maybe just pause for 2 minutes here. Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda. I believe there's one that's been removed from it, but I'd ask Counselor to make a motion for the consent agenda. 9.1 has been removed for voting purposes. Counselor Cortash, would you like to make the motion?
That the recommendations in the following agenda report be approved. 6.1 regular council meeting minutes of November 18th, 2025, and 9.2 the RCMP crime analyst authorization.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there's gonna be questions. We can move this to vote. And that motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we will move into committee business and I invite Mr. Giesbrecht to begin his presentation regarding the policing committee recommendations.
Good morning. Thank you. Just give me a second here and I will share my screen.
I don't know how that beard can get better every time we see you, but you're doing it.
I tried.
It was a requirement of the new detachment commander, however.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here today. For the viewing audience's pleasure, my name is Aaron Giesbrecht. I'm the Acting Director of Emergency Services. With me today in the gallery is Staff Sergeant Dwayne Moore, who is the Acting Detachment Commander for the St. Albert RCMP, as well as Mr. Paul Specht, who is the Chair of the St. Albert Policing Committee. I'll be going through a brief presentation and then with the assistance of Staff Sergeant Moore and Mr. Specht, we'll answer any questions that council may have. So in this morning's presentation, I'll touch on the council policy on policing services, provide an overview of the RCMP staffing trends over the last 10 years, provide some context around staffing challenges, provide some comments around the historical strategy that we've used, then provide the committee's and administration's recommendations, as well as touch on financial impacts, followed by an opportunity for questions. So council policy CPPS 02 was last approved and updated on October 3rd, 2003. This policy is council's direction to administration and establishes police service levels and standards for the community. The policy outlines 3 guiding principles, which are that the city is committed to ensuring that residents live in one of the safest communities in Canada, that policing plays a vital role in the community safety, And that providing and maintaining appropriate resources allocations towards policing is required to ensure that St. Albert continues to be a safe community. The policy includes a number of standards and expectations, but the most relevant one for today's topic is in section 6, which states that to adequately resource and maintain policing services, the city will endeavor to have one RCMP officer for every 1,000 residents after giving due consideration for the ability to pay. Simply put, if we assume the city had approximately 73,000 residents, to reach the 1 to 1,000 ratio, the RCMP would have 73 officers on active duty and providing services to the community. That number obviously fluctuates. However, as of the last RCMP quarterly update, that number was at 62. So the graph that you see here shows the historical RCMP staffing trend in St. Albert. The blue bar represents the approved authorized RCMP officer number. It is the ask for the city to the federal government and the maximum number of officers that the city is contractually obligated to pay if those positions are filled. The red line depicts the actual number of RCMP officers that the city has been billed for. This is the number of officers that are stationed, active, and working, providing services to the community. The yellow bar shows what the municipality has estimated their budget on for the RCMP officers and the billing. The important thing to note here is that it's well known that the city will never be billed for the approved RCMP officer strength. This is due to the provisions and benefits that are outlined in the contract that we have with the federal government. For example, as with any workforce, there will be long-term and short-term leaves and vacancies that occur. These vacancies and leaves can happen for a multitude of reasons, including maternity, paternity, medical illness, injuries, as well as promotions and transfers. When these occur, it results in cost savings and creates the gap that you see here between the red line and the blue line. Although there are a number of contributing factors that could be considered when looking at RCMP staffing challenges in St. Albert right now, I would like to highlight the two main ones that we see. The first is the increase in the number of RCMP officers that are going off on leave. This is not unique to St. Albert or the RCMP, and it is a trend that we see across all policing employers. The other factor that we have seen is a bit more specific to RCMP policy and relates to the options that the detachment leadership has when leaves and vacancies occur. In the past, the RCMP had the ability to bring in additional officers and assign them to the same position number when someone went off on leave, on longer term leave. This was commonly referred to as double bunking positions. That practice has been deemed too risky and is no longer an option. What this results in is a situation where an officer is on long-term leave and essentially blocks a position that cannot be filled by another person coming in. The biggest operational impact that we see when these vacancies occur relate to the ability to provide proactive policing services such as crime prevention activities, traffic safety, community engagement, as resources ultimately get deployed to focus on crime response and investigational activity. Knowing this history and the challenges, many municipalities, including St. Albert, have employed a staffing strategy strategy where they increase the authorized FTE number of RCMP officers in an effort to get the desired number of officers delivering services in the community. One unique thing that St. Albert has done back in 2014 when we adopted this strategy was to establish an RCMP contract reserve, just in case the annual operating budget that the municipality had set for the RCMP contract was under what the RCMP provided in terms of staffing. So the reserve ceiling has been historically set for around the 10% mark of the overall RCMP ask. The idea here is that the larger the gap between the annual budget number and the authorized RCMP strength, the greater the risk is to exceed the annual operating budget. If that does occur, the draw from the reserve can be made without impacts to taxes. The reserve is currently sitting at a max ceiling of just over $1.9 million, which represents the estimated cost for 8 officers. This is an ongoing strategy that requires regular monitoring for adjustments to ensure that council's desired outcomes are realized and within the funding that has been made available. The policing committee monitors and discusses RCMP staffing levels in the context of achieving the policing priorities that they set. At their September 5th committee meeting, they passed a motion that recommends council to increase the authorized strength from 75 to 85 RCMP members. Should council support their recommendation after taking into consideration the ability to pay, administration would then recommend to increase the RCMP contract expense reserve ceiling to the equivalent of the estimated cost of 9 RCMP officers from 8. In terms of financial impacts, administration is confident that there will be no impact to the 2026 proposed operating budget if these motions are passed. If the operating budget is found to be insufficient in 2026, the $2.27 million reserve available will cover any additional costs. Having said this, it's important for council to know that by increasing the authorized strength by 10, it is more likely than not that additional funding beyond the budget of 65 officers will be required starting in 2027. More detailed information and alternatives have been provided in the agenda report for council's consideration. Myself, Staff Sergeant Moore, and the Policing Committee Chair Paul Specht would be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giesbrecht. I believe Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, I think maybe the previous slide, the last slide, kind of maybe got across the question I was going to ask and more around emphasizing that there's really no financial implications beyond our regular budget in this request, because we can ask whether we ask right now, we have 75 authorized. We could staff up to 70, but we're being billed for 65, and we actually really only have 62. So I mean, a lot of numbers, a lot of numbers. Is that correct?
Sorry, just a minor point. We're actually budgeting for 65. We're not being billed for 65.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, I meant, yeah, we're being budgeted 60, but we're not being billed. We're only being billed on the number of officers that we actually put on the street and that's available. And that doesn't include soft vacancies. So again, I'm just kind of going through those things. So that's confirming all of that so far is correct.
Correct.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that I noticed in the backgrounder is the average cost for one member comes out everything included, not salaries, benefits, cars, radios, weapon systems, is $252,300. Yet when I was in Calgary, I had a presentation from the RCMP commissioner where it was substantially lower than that. So where are we getting that number from?
Thank you for the question. What I suspect has happened there is that any number that was quoted was the direct costs of the officer versus the indirect costs that are also added. So the number that we've quoted here in the agenda report, just to break it down for you, is it's essentially the total amount that the federal government is charging the municipality divided by the actual officers that are provided in a given year. That gives the $250,000 per member. If other numbers are used for quoting that per member number, such as just the salary costs and not the indirect costs, then that number is obviously lower.
So, I mean, in relation to the reserve and the subsequent request to just increase it by one member, the reserve you identified is that it's max at 1.9, and if we do go to 9, we're at 2.27. How does that reserve get filled? It doesn't come off the tax levy, correct?
So the reserve gets what happens with the reserve is that at the end of each calendar year, if there is a surplus in the policing budget, that amount of money will automatically top up the contract reserve. If there is no surplus in the policing budget, that top up doesn't happen, or it's a conversation for council to take it from the corporate surplus if they would like to top it up.
Right. So I mean, but potentially that's not happened yet because I mean, historically, we've always been under the actual number that we pay.
Correct. We haven't made any draws from that reserve, if that's the question.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be because I mean, we have a maximum and we've maintained that maximum because we just now, if there's any surplus, it doesn't go into the reserve, it goes into, where would that go? Just so I don't misspeak.
Thank you for the question. So if there is a greater RCMP surplus, then we need to top up the reserve. It would just fall to the bottom line surplus for the city, and council would choose where that.
That's what I was gonna say, but I didn't want to misspeak. So I mean, I guess for anybody watching and for the rest of council, I mean, whether we went 75 or 85 or 100, this is just seen as a strategy so that we can actually increase our hard costs or our hard vacancies so that we can actually write a letter to the RCMP and say, look, we've now got this many vacancies, can you fill? But it's still manageable on any number of levels, both from our RCMP detachment and also from within in relation to kind of where our limit is, right? Or with our salary.
That is correct. I will also add just one additional piece in there. The municipality always has the option to formally reduce the number of authorized officers as well.
So I mean, there's no, like, just because we go to 85 doesn't mean that we'll ever get 85. We can always manage that number. There's no threat there.
Yeah, I mean, the risk is very low that their 85 officers will materialize overnight. If we got to that point, I think we would sort of see the trending, right? And we'd have those discussions. Yeah.
And really, I mean, and maybe I'm a member of the police committee, so I can understand a little bit the challenge we're having right now with the 85, and I can bring it forward at the motion. The problem we had at 75 is we still got how many hard vacancies? I think we've got 3 hard vacancies. Sorry, can I ask that question to the detachment commander? Process wise, how many hard vacancies do we currently have? I think I read that we have 3, 4.
Members, it was showing 62. We're actually at 59 right now. There's 15 soft vacancies and 2 hard vacancies.
So I mean, the strategy again is such that we can't backfill the soft vacancies, those numbers that the detachment commander just identified. So the strategy is to increase our complement number to get more hard vacancies, because we can actually go to staffing with the RCMP and make that request to fill that number. So we've always run historically, you saw the number at about 62 to 59, somewhere in there. And we did have a bad year for a while there where we were down around 50, but that's kind of the idea. Is that?
Yeah, that would be correct there. And I think if you looked at that one slide when about a year and a half or so ago, where we increased the number from I guess it'd be 70 to 75. We did this, like I said, a year and a half or so ago, 2 years ago. You did see how that actually did help. We went from, I believe we were charged for 54 in the year prior, up to 59.
Yeah.
And then we went up to like 61. So the strategy does work. It's showing that when we did increase that by 5, we were able to start working and get closer to that 65 number than we were when we were only at 70.
And I guess, I mean, is this strategy, are you aware of this strategy being used or implemented across Alberta or the rest of Canada? Or is this something, I mean, RCMP staffing must know that this, I mean, we wrote it. We wrote it in here. So, I mean, they must be aware of it.
Exactly. They're aware of it. And, you know, it's just one of the benefits of having the RCMP contract is that the way that the system works is that you're only going to be charged under the contract for the on average, the number of members that are working for that entire 12-month period. That's why you'll see numbers of like, I don't know, 59.23 or whatever the case happens to be. So this is a benefit that municipalities like the city of St. Albert would have, that other jurisdictions, it becomes a little more challenging, I think, on the provincial side. But this is a strategy that's utilized by municipalities in order to achieve their goal of meeting the number of members that you would like to see filled. And in this case, that would be 65. And I know that it came up there earlier about the fact that, yes, you have to sign off on a document indicating that if you went to 85, that you're willing to pay for 85. There is no way that you're ever going to fill 85 of 85 positions. There's always going to be maternity leaves, paternity leaves, members off sick. But as was stated, if the trend starts showing that we're moving in that direction, you have that reserve in order to cover maybe that in the short term. But we're able to, without even eliminating positions, working through with staffing, I can easily just what we would refer to as block a position. So if we're concerned that it was like we might be getting into an area where we're going to be exceeding that budget, we're able to now just make sure that staffing does not fill that position.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all my question.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bermansky, I believe, has some questions as well.
Thank you. Just one question. Last time we did the increase, we went from 70 to 75, and I'm just wondering why we didn't just go 75, 80, because even if you're at the 73 to align with our 1,000 per citizen, you'd still be 7 officers over at that point, and you're pushing it to 12 over now. So why the double jump compared to the last jump?
I think that this was discussed at the policing committee meeting. We were in September. It was discussed that we would be moving to requesting or proposal put forward to ask for another 5. It was Councillor Mackay actually brought up the fact that why don't we just go to 10? We probably should have done that instead of just asking for 5. We could have asked for 10 or 15 or 20. The number, as Councillor Mackay had indicated, that actual number doesn't really mean a whole lot. You could have 100 police here. Once what we care about, or what the city's going to care about, is how many you are actually paying for. And if you want to pay for 65 right now and ultimately move towards that 73 or 74, depending on the population, we need to start increasing our number. So in hindsight, it probably would have made more sense with the same justification that we have now and that we had back when we asked for the 5, that we had asked for actually more than the 5. So that's,
you're saying you should have asked for like 15 instead of 5 at that time?
yeah, because we're right back at the same position that, like I said, in hindsight, by adding those 5 on average, if you look at the numbers and the history, by adding 5, the hope was we would just get actually 5 more, which we actually did. We went from 54 to 59. And then once again, you're always going to have the fluctuations there. Ultimately, we were at 61. But by adding 5, we were never going to go from 54 to 65 by just adding 5 positions. So like I said, in hindsight, we probably should have asked for more positions than we did.
It's certainly an odd process, but I guess you do what you have to do.
It is odd, and I know that coming forward in front of council, asking for positions and not asking for any more money. It is a perk, if you want to say, of this contract, that you're able to benefit from that. So that's why it's for the city like this to be able to take advantage of that. It's an excellent tool that we can utilize in order to ensure that we meet the requirements that the city puts on us.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hughes has a question now, please.
Thank you. Just, can you just explain the difference between the soft vacancies and hard vacancies? Like, is the soft vacancies basically sick leave or something of that nature? So we have 15 officers out of our complement that are currently on leave for either maternity or illness. Is that correct?
That would be correct. So what we refer to as a hard vacancy is there is nobody that's named to that position. That's completely vacant. There is nobody that's assigned to that position. We're always going to have a couple of those, and ultimately even only having 2 out of 75 is an excellent number, because you're always going to have somebody that's moved out. We need to backfill them. And that can take a little bit of time. But the soft vacancies, you are correct, Councillor Hughes, in regards to the fact that that is going to be a maternity leave, a paternity leave, sick leave, those type of leaves where somebody is assigned to that and could be coming back to work. Yes.
Okay. I had a follow-up question that left my brain, and forgive me for this, but so how many actual boots do we have reporting for duty in a week? Like, how many do we have actually on the streets right now?
Yeah. So right now we have 59.
59
as of this morning.
But but the soft vacancies would bring it down by 15, wouldn't
No,
it?
no, sorry, there's 15. That's 59 that are operational members,
Okay,
full operational hours and operational duty. So we have 59 that you would be, if you want to say one instant in time that you would be getting charged for. The other 15 soft vacancies, they're not coming. So it's the 15 and the 2 hard vacancies are on top of the 59.
so if the people who were on soft leave came back, like everybody came back tomorrow, then we would have what, 74?
Yeah, it's because we have one that's we're still working through that double bunking issue. So that's why the numbers, when you add all those together, you actually get like 76 instead of 75. So yes, that would be if everybody came back, you'd have 74. But once again, there's always that fluctuation where people are on maternity, paternity, sick,
Yeah.
within any organization.
Sure, I get that. So I'm just trying to figure, so, because we're budgeting for 65. So if all of our soft vacancies were no longer, they all came back, but they wouldn't. Okay,
Yes.
okay. And so that's what we're also
And
expecting.
that's as I stated there before, if we started to see that, if for some reason the stars aligned and everybody
Yeah.
came back to work, we would then have to start working on with our staffing department, looking at, the movement of people out, or when a hard vacancy was created because somebody was promoted,
Yeah.
that you would just then block that position, and that would be through attrition. You just
Okay.
wouldn't fill that.
All
Or
right.
retirements or whatever happens to be.
Right, okay. Different problem to have, not there yet.
That's the problem we're working, hopefully that we'll have at some point.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Cortash?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I had a good handle on this until we started asking questions. Now I've got more. So you had said that when we went from 70 to 75, we actually ended up getting another 5 officers on the ground. Does that mean that if we go from 75 to 85, we're going to get another 10?
We will fill those 10.
Okay.
Yes, and if, yes, so that would be the case. And now they're not all going to show up at one particular instant in time. That's why right now we're not asking for any more money, and it's not going to affect your 2026 budget, I guess you're referring to as. But there is that ability with your reserve to be able to fund an additional 8 positions that are there for an entire year. And ultimately, I think when Aaron had brought that up there, the goal or what you're trying to achieve there, as per previous council's request, is that you would like to be going to the 1 to 1,000. So ultimately, you're funding right now 65 positions. If we look at the population, as I believe maybe we're even at, we'll just say 74,000, you would be looking at funding 74, if that makes sense. We've never had to come and ask you. The population has been increasing. It has been increasing. Once it hit 65, or once we went to 66, 67, 68,000, we should have been asking, theoretically, we should have been increasing that budget to whatever that population ratio is. We've never had to ask you for that money because we've never attained the 65. So there was no point coming to council and asking for, can you fund 68? Because at the end of the fiscal year, we reimburse you the money that was in excess of what you actually should have paid.
I understand. Thank you. Thank you. I understand that. I'm looking at, we went from being billed, so the actual amount that we were being billed from whatever it was, 54 to 59, I think I heard you say. And so now that was when we increased the request by 5. And so is it our expectation that by increasing the request by 10, that the amount that we're billed for is also going to increase by 10? I had thought not, but then.
I mean, it's just going to be, if you look at like historical numbers and percentages of those 10 that we would get, we're probably going to have some of those that are a percentage of those, which it always seems to be about the same, 20, 25%, whatever that number happens to be. So that's going to be the same with those 10 coming in. There's going to be mat leaves in there. There's going to be sick paternity leaves, and there's going to be sick leaves, all probably with the same percentage.
So we got lucky and the stars aligned when we got those 5 when we went from.
Well, I think, and I certainly can't speak to our CMP staffing, but you just sort of accept that there's a 15 to 20% rate of folks who are in billets but have stuff going on in their lives and they're not at work at any given time, right? That's that soft vacancy. I think it's sort of intuitive to say that, you know, if you accept that, then maybe 8 of those 10 are here on any given day. I would say from a council policy perspective, right, the 1 to 1,000, it's shall endeavor to, it's not thou shalt, right, but it shall endeavor to, should put us at 73 or 74 officers, right? And ideally 73 or 74 are on the streets day and night, right? You know, working on behalf of our residents. And so we're budgeting 65. A good problem to have is to look at having to budget 66 or 67 or something. We would have to figure that out. But based on council's policy and sort of that capital PS public safety, I would like to get there. I don't think we're going to get there. And I think we'll have lots of time to react before we get there, Councillor, if that sort of gets after what you're talking about. Yeah.
To be honest, I'm not too worried about it from a financial perspective because at that, you know, we've got that well in hand by the sounds of it. I'm just a little baffled by how the allocation occurs. Maybe this is to your point, Councillor Mackay, about and I don't know if you can answer, but if the RCMP knows that we do this, we're requesting 85, we're not going to get 85. They know that other municipalities do this. Like, how do they decide how many we actually get? Like, they just say, well, we think you've asked for 85, so we'll try and give you 10 less than that. That's not a question. I don't know. You can't answer that.
Well, no, I could try. They do fill all of those positions. So when you're asking for 85, the requirement is going to be for the under contract within 12 months that we fill those positions. So it's not that we won't. Right now I have actually 76 of the 75 positions filled. So we don't have any of there's 2 hard vacancies, but we're working on filling those. So the only time we would make the decision to not fill a position of that 85 is going to be if we started to see that trend going and exceeding the number that the council's willing to pay for, in which case we would just block that. But right now I don't have any positions that are blocked.
I'm sorry. I understand now. Now I understand the soft and hard vacancies.
Okay, that's right. But the filled position doesn't equate to getting billed for it. Right. Depending on that.
But the 85 will be filled. Just a lot of them will be soft vacancies.
Right.
Thank you.
Just before we go to motion here, to simplify it, would it be we have our floor of the minimum. We know we're going to have vacancies in that 15 to 20%. The mechanism to try to pull that up is with the additional asks, knowing that we're not going to get all of them. So if we ask for 5, we might get 1. If we ask for 10, maybe we'll get 2. Like, is it just pulling the bottom end up?
Well, I think we asked for 5, we'll get 5. How many of those 5 are working every day and not on, parental leave or sick? Like, I mean, those things will still continue to happen, right? But the RCMP, the contractually obligated to fill the positions we ask for. And I think you characterize it right from my perspective, but I would defer to the policing committee, right, who's kind of driving this, but.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay, I believe, will make a request to motion.
Yeah, if there's no more questions, I can move the motion that in accordance with with Article 5 of the Municipal Police Service Agreement, the mayor be authorized to formally request the federal government to increase the RCMP authorized complement of the St. Albert RCMP detachment by 10 members for a total of 85. Do you want me to read in the second motion as well?
So the second motion is only if the first motion is
fair
approved, so we should do them separately.
Okay, you bet. All right, thanks. And I can open debate if you want.
Pardon me? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I mean, basically my debate is in my questions that I answered, and I think obviously this is in a decision made by the policing committee in relation to get our staffing to where we can actually start to look at what our complement should be, factoring in the discussion we've already been made aware of is that we will always have a significant number of soft vacancies, and that could be between that 15 to 25% range. But I mean, that's just a factor of staffing. And if you look historically, and that chart did show it, we've always had that number of soft vacancies. So the strategy put in place a couple of years ago, as was identified, is to move our authorized strength to 75 to get to 5. And you saw that it did work. We ended up from going a traditional 52 to 54 officers working the street. And I gotta also kind of break away and say during COVID, that number went down to into the 40s. 40 people. And so what that required the RCMP do was to stop staffing up operational units within the city. So we lost our traffic. We lost some of our school resource officer capability. So some of the important duties that that we would want our RCMP members to do, getting out into the community, dealing with traffic issues, dealing with engagement with the community and particularly our youth, we're basically left vacant because we needed to have that reactive response to calls capability. With that strategy to go from to 75 and to get our numbers up, we were actually able to backfill those positions. So now we have a full traffic squad, and they still haven't caught me yet. I've got, so I'm quite proud of that. That benefit is there. We also now are working with the schools. We do have our school resource officer there. There's another strategy that we're actually, I think schools are actually using paid overtime in relation to filling some of those schools. So we do have capacity. So the strategy worked. So the police committee then realizing that we're still not getting to that number of operational members out on the street, we went to saying, let's move it, might as well move it up to the number that we think we need because we have to take into account that we're always going to have those vacancies. That's where the 85 came from. But like I said in my questioning, we could say we wanted 125. We can still manage it within our management processes, both within our policy and also within the RCMP contract that says we can block and stop whenever we're there. So this really has no financial implications other than allowing the RCMP to staff up to an area that we believe is important for our community.
Thank you very much. I think you made a strong argument, so I don't see anybody looking to question that. So I guess we can move it to vote, please. Not surprisingly, that motion passed unanimously. Councilor McKay, are you going to make a motion on the second one?
Yeah, I sure will. Sorry, I'm just going to, can you move to the floor? That schedule 06 of City Council Policy C-FS-01 financial reserves be amended to increase the ceiling of the reserve from the equivalent of the estimated cost of 8 RCMP officers to 9. You notice I said RCMP there.
I don't believe there's a question, so we'll accept it and we move to debate.
No additional debate. I think that was answered in the background.
Thank you very much. We can move it to vote. That motion's also passed unanimously. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move to business items for information and have our quarterly policing update on Q2. Shouldn't have sat down.
Good morning. I've done a lot of talking already, so I'll try and keep this as brief as I can, but yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present the second quarter policing report. We go by a fiscal year. The RCMP goes by a fiscal year of April to March, so that's why it's our second quarter report, which would be the equivalent of the city's third quarter. So I just want to let you, yeah, I'm acting Staff Sergeant Dwayne Moore. I've been in this role for about 15 months now. This will be the last time that I'll present to you. I know some of you have presented to a few times and others, this is just my first time. So I guess I'll be the first and last for you. There is the new officer in charge that's been selected, Staff Sergeant Aaron White. He'll be taking over from me at the beginning of January, probably around January the 5th. We'll have a transition period there. where I'll be able to assist him. He's coming from Western Alberta District up in the Grand Prairie area, but his plan is to be starting here the first week of January. So I'd just like to let everybody know that it's been a pleasure acting as the OIC here, and I appreciated all the time and the support that the RCMP's received. So thank you very much. I am going to be going over this quarterly report. I'll provide an update on the four priorities. I think I was going to touch on the staffing numbers. I think we've talked enough about that unless somebody wants to go over that again. But thank you very much for increasing those numbers. It's greatly appreciated, and we'll be endeavoring to fill those positions as quickly as we can. And then I'll just go over some of the statistics quickly, and then I'll open it up for questions. So in consultation with the policing committee, 4 priorities were set for this fiscal year of 2025-2026. So I'll just touch base on each one of those. So the first priority was crime reduction. So the St. Albert Crime Reduction Unit manages the habitual offender management program and the files that we have there. Currently, there's 17 people that are being monitored, with those having various degrees of conditions. A big one with the conditions that we monitor for is going to be curfews checks, and those are completed on a random basis with a greater focus on those who are prolific offenders. And prolific offenders are just those who are well known to us, that are known to be responsible for a significant amount of the crime. So those are the ones that we really concentrate on. During this quarter, the Crime Reduction Unit worked with the community response team out of our headquarters, as well as local retail store loss prevention teams, in order to conduct shoplifting blitz at 7 stores locations over a period of 3 days. Now, working with those store managers and basically at their discretion, some of those persons were removed from the stores, while 4 prolific offenders, as I stated before, they were arrested and charged, with 2 of those being on a number of outstanding warrants. So not only, once again, they might be, we might look at this as a minor type of crime if you want to look at it, but once again, that's a crime nonetheless. And whether they're stealing from, the Walmarts or the superstores or whatever, they're also well known to be committing lots of other crimes. So that's just another way that we can be monitoring them. And we've had very great success working with the local community in order to try and deter that type of crime. Now, also, we realized there was a recent theft of construction equipment, and that seemed to be on the increase. With the property crime here in St. Albert, that led to an investigation and a recovery of $130,000 worth of stolen property. Now, in collaboration with the RCMP Auto Theft Unit, Parkland RCMP, St. Albert Crime Reduction Unit, we conducted 2 search warrants that resulted in the arrest of an individual and the recovery of goods from St. Albert and Stony Plain. So we know that these criminals don't just stop at the border just because it's the city of St. Albert. We're not going to just stop there and just hand that off to whether it's EPS or the RCMP in another jurisdiction. We work very closely with our partners in order to ensure that we hold these people accountable. So that's just a prime example of, especially where things are being stolen in a city like St. Albert, they tend to be held out in the more rural areas where I'm used to working, out Thorsby, Breton, those to Parkland County, those type of areas, just because when you have trailers and trucks and tractors and everything that you're stealing from cities and you need to hide them, it's going to be out in these more rural jurisdictions. So we need to be working with our partners, and that's a prime example. The second priority is mental health and vulnerable communities. So that really falls under our crime prevention and victim services specifically, but to all the members in general. So during this quarter, the CPVS members attended multiple school events, such as the Back to School barbecues and Orange Shirt Reconciliation Day school event. They also attended the Canada Day celebrations and community anti-hate crime events. And in addition, we're really starting to promote this now that our numbers within the CPVS unit are increasing, and we're able to get out to not only just the schools, but also work with the elderly, because we know that they're definitely a vulnerable sector of the community that are especially being taken for a lot of money in regards to frauds and those type of scams and that. So we've been really pushing that, and during this quarter we They had a number of home visits that increased with the CPVS members answering or attending to answer questions, as well as giving 2 senior fraud presentations. In addition to that, their partnership was established this year with the St. Albert Chamber of Commerce concerning the safety and theft deterrent at the St. Albert's Farmers Market. That came up there as a concern for the community. Just the fact that it's just so successful here with the farmers market and the sheer number of people that we have there. We just want to make sure that it's safe for the community to be attending there without having an overly overt presence of police there. So we're there on a regular basis, and they completed a regular foot patrols on a number of occasions, with attending almost all of those ones in order to reduce theft. But and they, like I said, they've also been working with the chamber in order to determine going forward what are the best recommendations and suggestions to ensure the safety of all. CPVS members also attended the weekly summer bike camp to speak about the bicycle safety. And in addition, CPVS attended community charity partnership events, including the Tim Hortons Camp Day, McDonald's McHappy Day, Dairy Queen Miracle Day, and Salvation Army Touch a Truck Day. The third priority is domestic violence and assaults. So we do have a domestic violence unit that's part of our general investigation section. And the coordinator for the domestic violence unit attended the domestic violence committee meeting and completed the final stages planning for the exploitation and human trafficking workshop that was held here in St. Albert in October. That was very well attended by numerous community partners and well received. There's now a central shelter intake through dialing 211. So that can be provided resources on which shelters are available. And this information has been provided to all of the frontline members at the St. Albert RCMP, so that when they are out there and in contact with the people who are in need, we're able to pass that information along there as well. And we work very closely with our victim services unit in order to ensure that the services that these people need are being able to provide it to them. And we do have the victim services unit that's based directly out of the St. Albert detachment. Currently, there's 2 people in that role, but we also have access to a number of other advocates out in the rural area that we can pull in if and when required. And finally, the domestic violence coordinator attended the case management meeting with victim services, where they discussed high-risk clients and any further resources that may be needed. And the fourth priority, which is near and dear to Councillor Mackay's heart, is going to be traffic. And one day we will get him. So the St. Albert traffic unit is fully staffed, and as was stated there. So in the past, then that's another way I think that we've been able to increase our numbers. I was an advocate for that when I came here, is that some of those positions weren't being filled. They were just members were being sent elsewhere or to fill other positions and stuff there. So I was able to push that. And now we have a full complement of operational members in the traffic unit. So that's fully staffed, and efforts are being made to streamline certain administration processes so that members can be more visible in the community. And that in particular has to do with really the administrative process for like collisions, where it just takes up, a significant amount of our time when we're at those things. So we're looking at streamlining that process so that frees up the member and puts the work back onto more like municipal employees, those type of ones where it's just administrative paperwork. And now during the summer months, when there was no students in school, the traffic unit made a concentrated effort to be more visible in construction zones, playground zones, residential areas, and areas of high traffic volume. The enhanced traffic shifts, which have been implemented now, especially with the automated enforcement and the changes that were made at the provincial level and the restrictions that came with that. There's enhanced shifts. Those continue and have been very successful and very positive feedback from the public. You're seeing that's not just with the RCMP that are out there, but also we're utilizing the municipal enforcement from St. Albert there in order to have more visible presence in the areas that we're concentrating on. That's going to be, like I said, in the school zone. So it's not just all about, the enforcement. It's going to be about which is part of it there. But, so we want to make sure people aren't, on their cell phones. They're stopping at stop signs. They're wearing their seatbelts. All of these things that contribute to injuries and fatalities when there is a collision in that. So speeding in school zones, those type of things. But we also want the visibility. So you're seeing, I think, the feedback that I'm getting from the community is that they're seeing a lot more visibility of the police out there, because that's what we've heard from the community, is that they want that. The traffic unit also conducted a number of check stops, including joint forces operations with our partners agencies, and that would include the St. Albert Community Peace Officers, Edmonton Police Service, and Alberta Sheriffs. And with the return of school in September, patrols have increased in those school zones, and the traffic unit continues to adjust the priorities based on the feedback from the public. So that's just an update on the 4 priorities. Said human resources, we touched on that. And lastly, I just sort of want to just go over quickly. There's a couple of pages of statistics that are in there. But overall, if you look at it with the person's crimes, the property crimes, the other criminal code, they're broken down into a number of different subsections from there. But all of those items have decreased, which is excellent. So we're moving in the right direction for the crime in all of those particular areas. And once again, I attribute this to my members. It's the members that are out there doing that work, interacting with the public, having that visibility, that I really feel that all of that is, and concentrating on those prolific offenders, using our statistical analysis to determine where we should be at what particular time. So that's where, when we have that analyst that is extremely useful for us, we want people to be calling in complaints, and I will tell them we're never going to solve every single thing, but by providing us with that information, if you see a suspicious person, suspicious vehicle, whatever happens to be out of the ordinary, those things might be minor, or you had some vandalism done to your yard, like I said, more on the low end of the crime there, but all of that information is utilized so that we can now determine through a statistical system process where our members should be, what areas of the city, what time of day, what days of the week, those type of things. They're very beneficial for us in order to address the crime. The one number that I will bring your attention to, and this is just kind of it's a third quarter versus 2025 versus 2024, is going to be the number of tickets. So when those members are out on those enhanced shifts and that, it's going to be the tickets you'll see, but it's also going to be the visibility. We went from 587 violation tickets in 2024 to almost 2,100 in 2025. So, the number of tickets that have been issued is significant. The hope is we're not out there to just see how much revenue we can generate, is that we're going to be able to change some people's driving patterns and habits and stuff. And if that means, it becomes muscle memory. If you don't wear a seatbelt, you tend not to wear a seatbelt. If you wear a seatbelt, it's almost impossible to get in a vehicle and not put one on. So if you get to that habit where you're putting that on, I've been to enough collisions to see just the benefits of, somebody wearing a seatbelt, what they can survive is unbelievable compared to when somebody's not wearing a seatbelt, how something, we'll say, more minor can cause, whether that's going to be a fatality or even significant injuries and stuff there. You need to stay within what we call that engineered life space, which is in your vehicle, in your seat, and safe. So those type of things, distracted driving. I think in a lot of insurance companies now are even looking at it that they're taking that as equating that to almost as bad as drinking and driving, just because of the fact that you don't keep your eyes on the road and all of a sudden now you're involved in a collision or off the road or whatever the case is. So we're out there making sure that that's being done, but also incorporating, like I said, the tickets, but also where does the public want us at? We need to be visible in those areas, school zones, playground zones, construction zones, those areas where people are at a higher risk of, something happening in that. So we would rather be there to prevent it than to have to deal with the aftermath and react to a file. So that's my presentation. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you very much. I missed the first part, so if you could start over, that'd be great.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll start.
No, thank you very much. We do have some questions here, I believe, so we'll start with Councillor Cortesh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to City Manager and Staff Sergeant Moore. First of all, thank you very much for that. I want to let you know that After talking to many, many people throughout the campaign, I can tell you that the overwhelming sentiment in the community is that we're well served by the RCMP and that the RCMP have a very good reputation in our community. And so proud to continue to have the RCMP serve our community. I had a couple of questions about the report. One just because I don't know what it is. What is criminal harassment? I noticed that was one of the areas, like crime overall looks like it's decreasing or the same, and nothing really stood out other than I don't know what criminal harassment is, and it looks like it's on the rise.
Yeah, no, that was a test. I just wanted to see who was looking at the stats. So you've passed. Yeah, in regards to that, that's why if you look at it like other threats, those numbers are actually down, and then criminal harassment. So if those two kind of balance themselves out, if you look at those two statistics together. So that really has a lot to do with how we're going to be scoring that in our system. So somebody may call up and saying that they're, somebody uttered a threat to them. Then we look into it, only determine like these threats are on a regular basis. So criminal harassment is more of a prolonged type of event where, somebody is, I'll just say that, threatening to kill you on a regular basis, stalking, following around, like those type of things, as opposed to a one-off. It's going to be more continuous. So that's why those numbers can kind of fluctuate. But overall, those numbers kind of balance themselves out. Ultimately, it's something that we would rather see none of. But every time I come in front of you or speak with the public, I keep pushing that I want you to report crimes. So in some of those cases, if people do that, we know that a lot of these things are being underreported. So whether that be through domestic violence or whatever the case happens to be, we want more of those calls coming in so that we can help those people and address those issues earlier on. So even though the numbers go up, that may not necessarily be a bad thing.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had, and I was going to do this as a council inquiry, but I thought maybe today would be better, right? I'm not sure if the rest of council's aware, but I know it's been brought to my attention by a couple of residents that Morinville uses something called the Rave app, which is, I think, an RCMP initiative, I understand correctly. And so they send out text messages, weekly messages that have, I guess, more detailed statistics than what are in the weekly crime map that we have in the Gazette. And it's really well liked by the residents in Morinville. They get that kind of detail. It also has the ability to send out text messages for be on the lookout for different things or stay in your home or different sort of alerts like that too. Anyway, just wondering if that's something that St. Albert is using. Can we use it?
No, that's an excellent question, and it's actually very timely. We just met with Nicole there from your communications branch with the city of St. Albert last week in regards to options, or we had a discussion as to how we can, going forward, what is the best way in order to improve our communication. The old way of doing it, whether it just happens to be through just paper or whatever the case is, maybe that's we need to start improving in order to utilize social media and reaching more of a targeted audience. So that's where that Rave system is very useful, is that I'll just say the traditional way of getting information out is that we would put out a press release that goes to numerous people within the press world. They decide what they're going to print, whether it's printed, when it's printed, all those type of things. So that Rave is a system where you can opt in. The community members can opt into that, and you can opt in for any particular area that you would like in Alberta. So you might be from here, so you'd opt into the St. Albert one, but maybe you have a cottage out in Parkland County and you're kind of interested in what's going on there, and you got family up in Grand Prairie, you're interested, those type of things. So to try and answer your question, yes, that is something that we're going to be utilizing. And then by opting into that, now when we put that out, you're going to get it. You don't have to wait for some media outlet to either print that or not print it. So you'd be able to get that. So I think that's an excellent, and that is something that we had discussed. So we are going to be pushing that and then trying to get the people to, sign up for that. Because once again, whatever the press puts out there, that could be something that's happening down in Red Deer. Well, maybe nobody here really cares about that, or maybe you do. But if there's something happening in your specific area, like once again, there's just a truck stolen from this particular location, we're able to get that out fairly quickly. Like that bull will be on the lookout for this white Ford. Here's a picture of what it looks like, and it was just stolen 10 minutes ago. So you know, and once again, it's got its benefits in St. Albert and it has a really big benefit out in the rural area and stuff. So we have that's RCMP wide. But like I said, when you sign up for it, you pick which ones you want. And there's going to be, I think you had already mentioned it in kind of or I saw that earlier, that'll be by text or by email.
Yeah, it's a cool service and I'd love to see us use it. I think it helps reassure the community that the RCMP is active and doing a great job and increase value and respect for the RCMP. The last thing I'll say is just, Councillor Mackay, I think I heard earlier that you may have a legal defense now because you're being targeted under the traffic criminal harassment.
You can try that. We'll see how that goes. We'll let a judge decide.
Thank you very much. We'll move it to Councillor Bermansky now.
Thank you, and thank you for presenting to us again, Staff Sergeant. I just want to thank you for your time here and your demeanor. I mean, you know, it's just wonderful to have someone in so calm and such serious issues and whatever. So I really, really appreciate all you've brought to our city. Secondly, I just want to mention the uptake in tickets, like to see from 587 to, 2100. And then often I'm seeing on the road now, you'll have an officer and the lights going and someone's car pulled over and maybe some bottles on the hood or whatever. It's got just such a visual, to make the community stand, realize that those crimes are being stopped and whatever, rather than just photo radar tickets that just kind of go under the presence is there. So I just want to thank you for all that. And I suspect we'll have a mountain of toys for tickets this year then with all those extra tickets. So that's great. And we'll just give a shout out. You can still contribute even if you don't have tickets. So
Thank you.
So thank you again.
Thank you very much. I'm going to jump to queue here because I know Councillor Mackay has some words to share, but one quick question. You brought up the farmer's market. Obviously a lot of us have experienced it. There's a lot of people there on a Saturday. The foot presence is obviously, I think is a appreciated and necessary, but with 15,000 people that may run through there on a Saturday, are there plans to increase the presence? I just look at it as you compare other communities and you see when the large crowds gather, there's an opportunity for, problems or what's your perspective there, or what's the perspective going forward into the summer again?
Yeah, no, and that's a great question. I mean, we do have the presence that we've had there in the summer. We continuously monitor those type of events, and if we feel that there's the need for additional members, we have that ability to do so. We always have those members that are on regular duties there anyway. So even though you may not see those members out walking around, they are available to respond fairly quickly to any event that would be taking place. We don't want to necessarily overwhelm the place with the police, but that's why we're also working with the chamber to determine what other things could be put in place in order to ensure the safety of the people that are there, whether they be, just walking or the vehicle traffic and, the parking issues and, like issues that have happened in other locations where you want to make it difficult for, potentially for a vehicle to get into that particular area. So those are things that we're working with the chamber with to determine what they would like to see and what services we can provide to ensure the safety of everybody involved.
Thank you very much. And to echo a lot of the comments, thank you very much. I know we haven't had a chance to work together for very long, but certainly appreciated what you do and what you've done for the community. I'll move it to Councillor Hughes. I know she's going to ask to fill one of those soft vacancies here as a shift commander, but we'll move it to her first.
So thank you again for coming and stepping into that position. It's been a pleasure working with you since you've taken that position over. But I had a question with the drag racing. I'm just wondering, are we doing anything, or can we tell residents what we're doing towards addressing concerns about drag racing in the summer?
Yeah, and that's where, like I said, we continuously monitor and what's happening, within the community. And then we'll redeploy members as necessary. So the big thing is we need to be getting those calls, those complaints. There's the ability, if people witness an event themselves, whether they get a picture of that, whether you have a video of that, if you're able to get a license plate. So the fact that we're not there, we can issue tickets based off of the evidence of the public which is what we call a registered owner ticket. So that ticket, that violation ticket would then be issued, no different than if you got one by photo radar. It doesn't, we don't know who is driving, so it goes to the registered owner. There's no demerits associated with that, but those tickets can be issued to the registered owner for those type of things. But then if we know drag racing tends to happen in the, like I said, similar areas at similar times of day, but if we get enough of those complaints in, then we're able to pull that data and say, those are areas that we need to be focusing on, because we have other avenues of enforcement that I don't necessarily want to be getting into, but it's not, we can have that, you know, marked units as a deterrent presence and stuff there. But in other cases, there's other ways that we can try and address those issues and to ensure that we hold those people accountable.
So if residents contact us and they're concerned about it, we should tell them really to file a complaint with the RCMP when it's occurring.
Definitely.
And the problem with trying to catch somebody going really fast is sometimes it's hard to get a license plate when they're going really fast, right?
Exactly.
But at least at the bare minimum, if they can, great. And if they can't, then to make sure that they share that information with you guys, because they're probably just upset at home and not reporting it, is what I'm suspecting.
Exactly. And like I said, especially drag racing, they tend to like to do it in certain locations because it's long stretches of unimpeded roadway, those type of things. So if we know that it's happening in certain areas, then we can just be there in advance in order to try and deter those things. But we receive those complaints.
Perfect. Okay, thank you for your help. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And in closing, Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for giving me some time, Dwayne. It's been a blast. I just want to say on behalf of council and the community, I just want to thank you for your steady leadership and your willingness to step into this role to serve our community. I mean, now this is your second go at it. I mean, and it's basically been, I don't know, about 18 months overall total. So your professionalism, excuse me, your commitment to public safety and your ability to guide and lead. I know from speaking to individual members, they really appreciate you in your role. So I wish you all the best luck. I don't know if you're going back to your small rural roots, and I don't know if how you're gonna land, or if this has whetted your appetite for other things. But I just want to just say thank you very much on behalf of council, the residents, and certainly the policing committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dwayne. And I think we're just going to take a 2-minute recess, but if you do, it's a pleasure, maybe come down. We'd like to take a picture with you two down in front of down here in front of the.
Can I get Paul Speck to come down as well? He's the chair of the policing committee, and
For sure.
it's his last
Absolutely.
meeting too as well. So Paul, can you join us?
That'd be great.
Great picture there.
voting against this. So I actually have a question though,
Oh.
if we can. So the intention behind moving it before was because we were intending to go out of town for the strategic planning. And I'm just asking, I guess, is it possible the strategic planning was going to be Wednesday, Thursday, I believe. So at this point, there isn't a requirement to be, because we're going to be doing it closer to home.
Yep.
That we actually wouldn't need that travel day, correct? So I realized that when this came forward, it was to accommodate that, but are we still intending to have it on the Wednesday, Thursday?
I believe it's the Tuesday, Wednesday. actually,
Tuesday, Wednesday.
Counselor is the
Okay.
issue. And so you're correct, that travel day is not required. But it was 9, forgive me, I'm just going to call up a calendar so I don't spout off here.
Yeah, you know what, you're right, it's Tuesday, Wednesday. I guess, is it possible to move it to Wednesday, Thursday?
We've already gone firm with some bookings, so I'm afraid it's a little bit late now to do that.
Okay, so we've had determined a location for the.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Patrick, can make the motion.
That the 2025-2026 council meeting schedule be amended by moving the February 11th, 2026 Standing Committee of the Whole meeting to February 17th, 2026, and by moving the February 17th, 26 regular city council meeting to February 24th, 2026.
Thank you very much. I'll move it to a vote. That motion has passed with all in favor, except for Councillor Hughes who voted against. Thank you. I was doing so good and then I messed up my order. Jeez, sorry. Okay, so we'll move to now. We'll try this again. 9.3 with the presentation from Mr. Dooley.
Right. Good morning, members of council. For the record, my name's Trevor Dooley. I'm the city's senior manager for government relations, indigenous relations and environment. With me today is Mr. Monty. We're just presenting regarding the provincial electoral boundaries review that's currently underway. So for council's information, through provincial legislation, there's a arm's length electoral boundaries commission that's established every 10 years. And what they're tasked with is looking at the makeup of the provincial map for electoral districts across Alberta. This time around, due to population growth across Alberta, the number of seats is actually increasing by 2 from 87 to 89, and the province legislates that certain considerations need to be factored in to the commission's recommendations. So that includes population growth, geographical considerations, communities of interest, and citizen and stakeholder feedback. One item that's been recently removed sort of within the last 18 months is consideration for municipal boundaries. That used to be a factor, but has been removed by the provincial government to increase flexibility in the commission's recommendations. So they've kind of gone through the first round of engagement, and they've published their interim report in October, which now provides communities an opportunity to respond to those interim findings. And so within a City of St. Albert context, currently we're represented by 3 different provincial provincial electoral boundaries. So that includes St. Albert, which is kind of the west side of the city, Morinville, St. Albert, which includes the east side of the city, and then encompasses Sturgeon County and the towns within Sturgeon County, and then a portion of Lac St. Anne Parkland, which actually came into the city sort of post-annexation 2022. So that's current. And then what the commission is recommending for St. Albert is moving from 3 ridings to 2. So the first riding is the St. Albert riding, which in essence is what it is today, plus the annexation area included. So that means we'd no longer be represented by the Lac St. Anne Parkland District, but really is just sort of post-annexation cleanup. So it includes just about 53,000 residents from St. Albert. Then the second riding is St. Albert Sturgeon. So this is recommended to stay exactly the same. It's just a name change from St. Albert Morinville to St. Albert Sturgeon. And in the commission's interim report, they've stated that's more reflective of the community because obviously there's other towns within that boundary than just Morinville. So from a St. Albert perspective, there's just about 20,000 residents from St. Albert, and then the remainder are made up of Sturgeon County and residents from towns within Sturgeon County. So from city administration's perspective, we'd recommend that council support the proposed boundaries. Basically, the population thresholds for the districts. The commission is legislated to sort of try to hit somewhere around 68,000 people. So that means ultimately the city can't have just one electoral district. And the fact that the two boundaries with our two districts remain essentially unchanged, that provides continuity for the electorate. So in terms of next steps, should council support the motion, we'd work with the mayor's office to send a letter in to the Electoral Boundaries Commission. They're currently undertaking further engagement activities through to the end of December. And then they're tasked with submitting a final report to the government by the end of March. And then ultimately the government approves the recommended boundaries as proposed by the commission. They take effect prior to the next provincial election on or before October 18th, 2027. So that concludes our presentation, and happy to take any questions from council if there are any.
Well, I think you did a good job because there's no questions or clarification needed. So I would ask Councillor McKay to put forward a motion.
Yeah, I'll move the motion. I mean, there's really nothing more that we can say here. That the mayor be authorized to submit a letter on behalf of council to the Alberta Electoral Boundaries Commission in support of the proposed provincial electoral boundaries for the geographical areas, within the city of St. Albert. There's really no comment. I mean, the report speaks to itself. I mean.
Thank you. I'll accept it, and don't believe there's any debate, so we can move it to a vote, please. Thank you. That motion passed unanimously. Okay, I don't believe there's any emergent items on the list, so this
Just for 11.1, this is the third and is this final? So we just, I apologize, just for procedure wise, what should we do with that?
So that's a notice of motion previously submitted by a former councillor. So the procedure bylaw states that it will sit on 3 council meeting agendas. This is the second one. There's been a lot of committee of the whole and standing committee of the whole meetings in the interim, but this is technically the second council meeting. So if no one reads it into the record today or it's not moved today, it will just appear once again on the December 16th council agenda for the final time.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. So I'll pause for just a second here if there's anybody that'd like to read it in. I don't believe so. Okay, thank you. We will move to item 12, which I believe there is a notice of motion now to read into the record.
Yes, there's an information request and a notice of motion for Councillor Patrick.
That the 2025-2026 council meetings. Oh, no, sorry. Oh, hold on. Right here. Sorry. Okay, so I read. Sorry. The one from today. Is that right?
You can do both your IR and your notice of motion, councillor. So the one from today and then your IR.
Okay. Okay. So I'll read the first one. Then what would it take in terms of cost and planning to add a combination human and dog water fountain to the plans for the Lions Park upgrade? Would this sorry, and what would this add in terms of cost to the planned budget for this project? And then,
Thank you. And then just your notice of motion that you submitted today. Thank you.
okay, thank you. So one, that the 20-day notice requirement in section 119(9) of the procedure bylaw be waived. And two, that the administration pause the disposition of 13 Mission Avenue until meaningful and transparent engagement with local Indigenous communities, including the Odaipamisiwak government and St. Albert Métis District 11 representatives, as well as local First Nation elders, survivors, and descendants is conducted, and that administration return to council regarding the results of the engagement upon its conclusion.
And that's all of them that we had to read into the record. So that should be everything for item number 12.
Okay, now we just move it to vote.
Next would be in camera. Lunch is on its way down. I'd recommend that perhaps now's a good time to pause for a short lunch break and then we could move into camera.
Sounds great. Just before we do that, I believe Councillor Clark has two announcements to make. That's good.
I believe this is where I read in my attendance for committee. Is that correct?
And no, we do that once a month. So that should be on the next council meeting agenda under civic agency updates. So this is intended for information requests, notices of motion, and also any announcements that may be something related to a committee, but for committee updates, the intention is to do those under the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Can I ask a question? Would it be better if we just voted for in camera now and then met after lunch, or do you want to come back and do this?
It's fine, council, if you wish to do that, I believe.
The in-camera motion can either be conducted here or it can be conducted in the council lounge after lunch. It's procedurally, it's okay either way.
I just think, how long were you breaking for lunch? I just procedurally, I just always hate, I don't want to be in camera while I'm eating lunch. I'd rather wait and do it properly.
If they're comfortable doing it in there, that's cool. That's fine. And I'm just assuming for the Gazette's sake that we don't have anything coming out of in camera, correct?
I'm not anticipating anything.
Okay. Perfect.
I have one question for legislative, the in-camera time, like would it start ticking now? So we're, another hour? showing
No,
in camera?
it will only start ticking once the motion is made. So my recommendation is to call a short recess now, pause for lunch, and then we can reconvene in council lounge. You can make the motion to go in camera and we'll carry on from there.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Call for a recess for now. Thank you.